Welcome back, my dear friends, to this episode of Egil Saga. There was a landholder in Norway called Eirik the All-Wise, who was married to Thora, Thordir's daughter and Arnbjorn's sister. He owned the land in Vik in the east and was very wealthy, distinguished and wise of mind. Their son, Thorstein, had been brought up at Arnbjorn's home, and although still young, he was fully developed. He had gone west to England with Arnbjorn. The same autumn that Egil went to England, word arrived from Norway that Eirik the All-Wise had died, and the royal agents had seized his inheritance in the king's name. When Arnbjorn and Thorstein heard this news, they decided that Thorstein should go to Norway to claim his inheritance. As spring drew on and people who planned to sail abroad began to make their ships ready, Thorstein went south to London to see King Athelstan. He presented the king with tokens and a message from Arnbjorn, and also gave a message to Egil, asking him to propose that the king should use his influence with his foster son Hakon to help Thorstein win back his inheritance and property in Norway. King Athelstan needed little persuasion, saying that he knew Arnbjorn as a fine person. Then Egil went to speak to King Athelstan and told him of his plans. "I want to go over to Norway this summer," he said, "to collect the property that King Eirik and Berg-Onund robbed me of. Berg-Onund's brother, Atli the Short, has it in his possession now. I know I would win justice in the matter with a message from you to back me up." The king said that it was up to Egil to decide where he went, "But I would greatly prefer it if you stayed with me to defend my kingdom and command my armies. I shall grant you great revenues." Egil said, "This is a very attractive offer, and I accept it rather than refuse it. But first I must go to Iceland to collect my wife and the wealth I own there." King Athelstan gave Egil a good merchant vessel and a cargo to go with it. The bulk of it was wheat and honey, and there was greater wealth still in other goods. When Egil was preparing his ship for the voyage, Arnbjorn's kinsman Thorstein joined his crew. Thorstein was the son of Eirik, as mentioned before, but was later known as Thora's son. When they were ready, they all sailed away. King Athelstan and Egil parted in great friendship. Egil and his crew had a smooth journey, made land in Norway at Vik in the east, and headed all the way up to Oslo Fjord. Thorstein owned a farm in the uplands there, stretching all the way to the province of Ramarik. When Thorstein reached land, he laid a claim to his inheritance against the king's agents who had been occupied his farm. Many people helped Thorstein and charges were brought. Thorstein had many kinsmen of high birth. In the end, the matter was referred to the king for a ruling, and Thorstein took over safeguarding the property his father had owned. Egil spent the winter with Thorstein, and there were 12 of them there in all. Wheat and honey were brought to his house. There was much celebration during that winter, and Thorstein lived grandly with plenty of provisions. Hakon, King Athelstan's foster son, was ruling Norway at this time, as described earlier. The king spent that winter in Trondheim in the north. As the winter wore on, Thorstein set off on his journey, accompanied by Egil. They had almost 30 men with them. When they had made the preparations, they went first to Uppland, then north over the Dovrefjell mountains to Trondheim, where they went to see King Hakon. They delivered their messages to the king. Thorstein described the whole matter and produced witnesses to the fact that he owned the entire inheritance he had claimed. The king took the matter favorably, allowing Thorstein to recover his property and thereby become one of the king's landholders, as his father had been. Egil went to see King Hakon and presented his own case, along with messages and tokens from King Athelstan. He enumerated the property once owned by Bjorn the landowner in the form of both land and money, and claimed half of it for himself and his wife Asgard. Supporting his case with witnesses and oaths, he said that he had presented the case to King Eirik as well, adding that he had not been given justice because of Eirik's severity and Gunhild's incitements. Egil recounted the whole episode that had taken place at the Gula assembly, and asked the king to grant him justice in the matter. King Hakon answered, "I have heard that my brother Eirik and his wife Gunhild both think you have thrown a stone that was too heavy for you in your dealings with them, Egil. I think you ought to be quite contented if I do not involve myself in this matter, even though Eirik and I did not have the good fortune to agree with each other." Egil replied, You cannot keep quiet about such a great matter, king, because everyone in this country, native and foreign, must obey your orders. I have been told that you are establishing a code of law and rights for every man in this country, and I am certain that you will allow me to secure these rights like anybody else. I consider myself a match for Atli the Short in both strength and kinsman here. As far as my dealings with King Eirik are concerned, I can tell you that I went to see him, and when we parted, he told me to go in peace wherever I wanted. I will offer you my allegiance and service, lord. I know that you have men here with you who do not look any more fearsome in battle than I am. I have an intuition that it will not be very long before you cross paths with King Eirik again, if you both live to see the day. I would not be surprised if the time comes when you feel Gunhild has rather too many ambitious sons. You will not enter my service, Egil, said the king. You and your kinsmen have carved too deep a breach in my family for you to be able to settle down in this country. Go out to Iceland and look after your inheritance from your father there. You will not suffer harm at the hands of myself nor my kinsmen there, but you can expect my family to remain the most powerful in this country for the rest of your days. For King Athelstan's sake, however, you will be left in peace here and win justice and your rights, because I know how fond King Athelstan is of you. Egil thanked the king for his words, and asked to be given tokens of proof to show Thord at Aurland or his other landholders in Sognafjord and Hordaland. The king said he would do so. Once they had finished their business with the king, Thorstein and Egil made preparations for their journey, and they set off. On the way south over Dovrefjell, Egil said he wanted to go up to Romsdal, and then back south along the coast. I want to finish my business in Sognafjord and Hordaland, because I want to make my ship ready to leave for Iceland this summer, he said. Thorstein told him to go his way as he pleased. He and Egil parted, and Thorstein went south through Dalin and all the way back to his lands. He produced the king's tokens and gave his message to the agents to hand over all the possessions that they had seized and Thorstein had laid claim to. Egil went on his way with 11 men. Arriving in Romsdal, they arranged transport. Then they went south to Moor. Nothing happened on their journey until they reached Hod Island and stayed at a farm there called Blindheim. It was a fine farm, and a landholder called Friggeir lived there. He was a young man who had recently received his inheritance from his father. His mother was Gyda, the sister of Arnbjorn the Herser, a fine and determined woman. She ran the farm with her son Friggeir, and they lived in style. Egil and his men were well received there. In the evening, Egil sat next to Friggeir, with Egil's companions farther down the table. There was plenty of drinking and a splendid feast. Gyda, the leader of the house, went to talk to Egil that night. She asked about her brother Arnbjorn and other kinsmen and friends of hers who had gone to England with him, and Egil answered her questions. She asked Egil whether anything noteworthy had happened on his travels, and he gave her a straightforward account, and then he spoke a verse. I could not stand the ugly landclaimer's wrath. No cuckoo would alight knowing that the squawking eagle prowls. There, as before, I benefited from the bear of the hearth-seat. No one need give up who boasts such a loyal helper on his travels. Egil was in good spirits that evening, but Friggeir and the people on the farm were fairly subdued. Egil saw a beautiful and well-dressed girl there, and was told that she was Friggeir's sister. She was unhappy and wept all the evening, which the visitors thought was peculiar. They spent the night there. The next morning there was a gale, and the seas were too heavy for sailing. They needed a ship to take them from the island. Friggeir and Gyda went to talk to Egil, inviting him to stay there with his companions until the weather was good enough to sail away, and offering him any transport he needed. Egil accepted, and they spent 3 nights there weather-bound, amid great celebrations. After that the wind calmed down. Egil and his men got up early that morning and made their preparations to leave. They went off to eat and were served with ale, and they sat at the table for a while. Then they took their cloaks, and Egil stood up, thanked the farmer and his mother for what they had provided, and went outside. Friggeir and Gyda accompanied them on their way, until she took her son aside and whispered something to him. While he stood and waited, Egil asked the girl, "What are you crying about? I have never seen you happy for a moment." Unable to answer, she cried all the more. Friggar answered his mother in a loud voice, "I don't want to ask them to do that. They're ready to leave now." Then Gerda went up to Egil and said, "I will tell you what is going on here. There is a man called Ljot the Pale, a berserk and a dueler who is very much loathed. He came here and asked for my daughter's hand in marriage, but we turned him down on the spot. So he challenged my son, Friggar, to a duel. He'll be coming to fight him at Valdero Island tomorrow. I'd like you to go to the site of the duel with Friggar, Egil. If Arnbjorn would hear, we would prove that we do not put up with overbearing behavior from such a man as Ljot." "For the sake of your brother Arnbjorn, it is my duty to make this journey with Friggar," answered Egil, "if he thinks I can help him in any way." "That is noble of you," Gerda said. "Let us go into the main room and spend the day here together." Egil and his men went into the main room and started drinking. They sat there all day, and in the evening, Friggar's friend who were to accompany him arrived, and there was a great gathering and feast that night. The next day, Friggar prepared himself to set off with a large band of men. Egil was with them. It was good weather for sailing, and they set off and reached Valdero Island. There is a fine field a short way from the shore where the duel was to be held. Stones had been arranged in a circle to mark out the site. Ljot arrived with his men and got ready for the duel. He had a shield and a sword. Ljot was a huge, strong man, and when he entered the arena, a berserk fury came over him and he started howling menacingly and biting at his shield. Friggar was not a big, strong man, but slim and handsome and unaccustomed to fighting. Seeing Ljot, Egil spoke a verse. "Friggar is not fit to fight a duel with the maker of Valkyrie showers, who bites his shield's rim and invokes the gods. We'll ban the man from the maiden. That awful character throws fated glances at us. Men, let us go to the dueling place." Ljot saw Egil standing there, and hearing his words, spoke to him. "Come here into the arena, big man, and fight me if you are so eager to do so. Let us test our strength. It will be a much more even fight than with Friggar, because I do not imagine I will grow in stature by taking his life." Then Egil spoke a verse. "It is not right to refuse Ljot his little request. I will sport with the pale man with my armor prodder. Prepare for a fight, I give him no hope of mercy. Man, we must make shields skirmish on this island." After that, Egil made ready for his duel with Ljot. He held the shield he always carried and was girded with his sword Adder, and held his other sword called Slicer in his hand. When he entered the arena marked out for the duel, Ljot was still not ready. Egil shook his sword and spoke this verse. "Let polished hilt wands clash, strike shields with brands, test our swords shine on shields, redden them with blood, hack Ljot's life away, play the pale man foul, silence the troublemaker with iron, feed eagle flesh." Then Ljot entered the arena, and they were ready for each other. Egil struck at Ljot, who parried with the shield, but Egil dealt such a succession of blows that Ljot was unable to strike back. Every time Ljot yielded ground to give himself room to deliver a blow, Egil followed him just as quickly, striking furiously. Ljot went outside the circle of stones and all over the field. The fight went on like this at first, until Ljot asked to rest, and Egil granted him that. They stopped to rest, and Egil spoke this verse. "The thruster of spear burners seems to back off from my force. The ill-fated wealth snatcher fears my fierce onslaught. The spear-dewed stave falters and fails to strike. He who asks for doom is sent, roaming by old bald head." According to the laws of dueling in those days, a man who challenged someone for anything and won would collect the stake. But if he lost, he would pay a sum that had been determined beforehand. If he was killed in the duel, he would forfeit all his property and his slayer would inherit it. The laws also said that if a foreigner died with no heirs in that country, his inheritance would pass to the king. Egil told Ljot to get ready. "I want us to finish this duel now." Then Egil ran at him and struck at him. He dealt such a blow that Ljot stumbled and dropped his shield. Egil struck Ljot about the knee, chopping off his leg. Ljot dropped dead on the spot. Egil went over to Frigger and the others and was thanked kindly for his deed. Then Egil spoke a verse. The feeder of wolves fell, worker of evil deeds. The poet chopped Ljot's leg off. I brought Frigger peace. I did not ask a reward from the splasher of gold for that. The spear's din was fun enough, the fight with the pale man. Most people did not mourn Ljot's death because he had been such a troublemaker. He was Swedish and had no kinsmen in Norway, but had gone there and grown wealthy by dueling. After challenging many worthy men to duels, he had killed them and claimed their farms and lands and had great wealth in both property and money. Egil went home with Frigger after the duel. He stayed there for a while before going south to Moor. Egil and Frigger parted in great friendship, and Egil asked him to claim the land that Ljot owned. Then Egil went on his way and arrived in Fjordane. From there he went to Sognafjord to meet Thord at Ireland, who gave him a good welcome. Egil stated his business and King Hakon's message, and Thord responded favorably to what he said, promising his assistance in the matter. Egil stayed with Thord for much of the spring. Takk skal du ha. Ha det.